Well, we're back, and with another crash out from YouTube's biggest Unreal Engine bad grifter. Yes, if Threat Interactive isn't DMCA striking everything from YouTube videos to Twitter posts, he's instead clowning around shouting at the sky about things for which he knows nothing about. Now, with that being said, I, like everyone else, will be unable to directly clip his content, which in this particular case is a good thing considering his recent video contained some of the most confusing, egregious graphs I've ever seen in my entire life. If you're curious what the graphs looked like, one of our community members was thoughtful enough to send over a straightforward, inspired by, but not exact replica of said graph. Personally, I find this one a lot more sincere. Now, usually in these scenarios, he and his drones fume at the thought of anyone questioning YouTube's favorite booger eater, and no matter what you say, they'll shout ad hominem, which is an enigma wrapped in a mystery to these people, it seems. They're likely watching with a popped blood vessel right now, so for the rest of us, let's take a moment to savor that. Alright, so today I'll be talking to you, the reasonable ones, capable of critical thinking, of nuanced discussion, and forming a rebuttal to the emotional points of the cringiest kid on YouTube. Firstly, I want to address his disastrous graph. Kevin, I fixed it. This is what you meant, I'm pretty sure at least. You see how the axis is positioned on the left with measurable numbers? Line graphs aren't really that difficult, it turns out, except maybe to someone who he himself couldn't understand programming enough to learn it. Here's a more appropriate graph for you. Or maybe this one. Both are equally true, and measurable across time. Now, let's talk about these claims, starting with claim number 1. The big one he's been crying about since the beginning. A tale as old as time. Graphics have gotten worse, he says. Regardless of whatever ill-formed graph, I would be curious to know by what metric you conceive this to be true. This singular claim alone is enough to remove the opinion of Kevin from any reasonable conversation. Graphics simply just didn't get worse. However, diminishing returns do happen to exist. Now, when you move from PS1 to PS2 to PS3, the improvements were massive. Entirely new capabilities and technologies were introduced that moved the needle significantly. Today, though, we're not jumping from blocky polygons to realistic characters anymore. We're moving from almost photorealistic to more photorealistic, and those improvements are much harder to notice and much more nuanced. Modern games now simulate things older games simply didn't even attempt. Real-time GI, volumetric lighting, PBR materials, subsurface scattering, ray tracing, path tracing, even hair simulation, and environments containing millions, even billions of polygons. What people perceive as graphics getting worse is, funny enough, the opposite. Graphics have gotten so advanced, the improvements are more subtle. It's like the difference between going from flip phones to smartphones, and then from the iPhone 13 to 14. The improvements are incremental and subtle, far more than before. Next, the popular claim that Unreal Engine ruined graphics. Now, if you want to know how ludicrous a lot of these takes are, there is a simple method. Listen to people like Threat Interactive, take what they say, and if you assume the opposite is true, well then in most cases you would probably be correct. So, Unreal Engine. Engines don't determine visual quality. Artists and rendering techniques do. Unreal Engine is simply a framework, one so good in fact that even Threat Interactive has stated it has effectively made most other commercially available engines obsolete. The same engine can produce Fortnite, or it can produce something like Hellblade 2, and everything in between. The reason Unreal is so widely used today is because it actually solved several massive rendering problems. Nanite allows developers to use extremely dense geometry without traditional polygon limits. Lumen provides real-time GI. These are major technical breakthroughs which simply didn't exist without massive limitations on previous methods. And ironically, many of the games people point to as better looking from the past were using baked lighting, far simpler materials, and dramatically lower polygon counts. I've also noticed as the discourse around Unreal Engine becomes increasingly aggressive, many of you point to proprietary engines like Decima, Black Space Engine now, and others. Now, these are great engines in their own right, but the simple fact is these proprietary engines are built to develop a very specific kind of game. Black Space Engine, albeit beautiful, is designed to make Crimson Desert and Crimson Desert alone. If you were to get a license for it, which is highly doubtful and one of the other reasons why these engines don't get used more regularly, but if you were, and you were planning to make a game that is not that which the engine was designed for, well, then you simply just are not going to be able to use it. There are also studios who have moved away from these engines people covet so much, such as Supermassive, who originally used Decima for Until Dawn and ultimately moved to Unreal Engine, or CD Projekt Red moving from Red Engine to Unreal Engine, and this has happened across the industry as a whole. Even Kojima's moving away from Decima with his new game currently titled OD. A game which Kevin seems to use screenshots of in reference to stellar graphics is Unreal Engine 5. Now, let's all take a moment to point and laugh. If TI had it his way, he would have us still in the Stone Ages working with techniques now only used as style choices. Whereas during their time, these games were made the way they were because it was simply the only or best way to do it. So, if anything, Unreal has made higher fidelity graphics and development more accessible, allowing more and more smaller studios, solo developers, indie developers, and individuals to create games on par with the larger studios. It allows people like you and me to compete, basically. I think because the general public has become somewhat familiar with Unreal Engine, like broadly speaking, they assume all engines are the same as these proprietary ones, just different, aka better. And that's simply just not the case. Unreal Engine is like a Swiss Army knife. It has tools for almost everything as a knife, scissors, screwdriver, corkscrew, etc. Millions of people can pick it up and build widely different things with it. Proprietary engines are like surgical tools, precise and specifically designed to do its one and only thing, and to do it very well. Now, why do modern games use upscaling? This is the next part, and this is the part that had Kevin really blowing a fuse. It was quite entertaining to watch, actually, to the point of incoherent rambling of conspiracies, how it's all a bid to pigeonhole you. Even going to say modern upscaling is a leading cause to games looking worse today than before. But this misunderstands why upscaling exists to begin with. Modern rendering techniques are incredibly expensive. We all should know this by now. Real-time GI alone can cost several milliseconds per frame. Ray tracing is even more demanding. Path tracing, forget about it. Upscaling technologies like DLSS, FSR, XeSS exist to solve a very simple problem. How do you run extremely advanced rendering techniques while maintaining high frame rates? He points at NVIDIA as the culprit, but each major provider has their own form of upscaling. So this feels like a moot point. It's an industry-wide solution, not an NVIDIA conspiracy. These systems render the game internally at a lower resolution, then reconstruct a higher resolution image using temporal data or machine learning. Now, this is important to note, as rendering at native resolution can be expensive, especially as monitor technology has become more advanced. You're not just running games on a 22-inch 1080p screen anymore like back in the day. You have 4K, 6K, even 8K monitor now. TVs that get upwards of 100 inches, varying refresh rates, and it all accrues a cost. What these upscaling technologies effectively do is level the playing field to create a more enjoyable experience all around for both players and developers. Now, TI loves to point at older games, saying how much better they looked, pointing at how they appear cleaner or sharper. And, well, it's not because they were more advanced, it's because they were, you guessed it, simpler. Older games had far fewer smaller details, less foliage, less geometry, less complex lighting. When you introduce complexity and denser environments, tiny subpixel details begin to flicker and shimmer. To solve that, modern games use techniques like TAA. These techniques stabilize the image, but they can also lightly soften it as well. So the sharpness people remember from old games is largely a side effect of those games being dramatically less complex. He also points to Burly BRDF, saying quite literally games are rich because it uses Burly diffuse, stating even the best artistry cannot overcome BRDF deficiencies, whatever that even means. Stating games like Uncharted and Callisto Protocol, while simultaneously forgetting games like Hellblade 2 and Unrecorded, which both used Unreal Engine 5. This, once again, just shows his ineptitudes in all things approximating reason or critical thought. Now, coming back to the subject of anti-aliasing, let me explain something. Ray tracing. Ray tracing works by, you guessed it, tracing millions of rays of light in the scene. The problem with that is the more rays, the better quality, the slower the image. The fewer rays, the better it runs, the more noisy it becomes. So if you switch to CMAA, SMAA's successor, kind of funny he doesn't know about it by the way, you lose the automatic denoising on those other techniques. All this whining stems from the fact that people like Kevin don't understand that we're living through a revolution in RT graphic techniques. It was generally considered impossible to have real-time global illumination without major compromise even 15 years ago, and everyone just assumed we would always be kind of doing hacks and have garbage approximations, like screen space GI for instance, where if you turn away from the red ball, with light shining on it, the red color radiosity from it just poofs out of existence. Instead of going, wow, this is great, we have real-time GI now, they go, wah, but they had baked GI that required mostly static worlds 20 years ago. This is bad. We live in an age where beyond ray tracing, games increasingly are beginning to even implement and test real-time path tracing, which, if you know much of anything about graphics, about rendering, is just absurd to think that's even possible when, again, just 10, 15 years ago, the idea of real-time ray tracing seemed like an impossibility. Now, I found this section of his video funny, by the way, where he started crying about people saying how path tracing looked so much better in Resident Evil 9, which he straight up calls a lie. Kevin's mantra should just be, believe what I say, not what you see. Your eyes are wrong, and I'm right. Kevin is stuck in 2009 begging for a return of techniques which have not been abandoned, they've been improved upon. Kevin, I now understand why you haven't responded to my emails. I should have been sending carrier pigeons instead. The best part of all of this is the delusions of grandeur. Because rest assured, the moment anyone of influence mentions anything remotely associated with any subject, which Threat Interactive has spoken about, he's quick to sniff their farts and claim it as his, forever stating the world is influenced by his magnanimous ideology. A small man with a god complex is not very impressive, but can you blame him? I mean, can you blame him? If he told you the truth, if he himself faced reality as to how beyond the YouTube grift, his impact on the industry is equivalent to a flea biting an elephant's ass, how else would he convince you to donate your monies? His Patreon is just his YouTube videos re-uploaded, and his website still claims to be raising $900,000 to hire graphics programmers to fix things which he himself has stated doesn't even understand. And let's not forget the game he claims to have been developing, but as always, it's easier to talk than do. It's been over a year, by the way, since all this began, since the inception of his quote-unquote game and the $900,000 Unreal Engine fork, and in that time, zero updates, zero news, because there is none, nor will there ever be. And for any of you screaming, source, well, don't get mad at me. I implore you to instead ask your savior, Threat Interactive, why he DMCA strikes anyone who posts anything about him, while he calls for his supporters to immediately downvote any game made in Unreal Engine. What a supportive message to the indies and solo devs, by the way. I will now call upon you to ask why he crumbles at the slightest notion of opposition. He'd probably delete his Discord channel if you did, but I forgot actually. This happened when I first called him out, and he deleted it back then already. Now, I'm sure he's looking for ways to do that to this video right now, to strike it. In fact, I know he is. He'll claim copyright, but we all know the truth. He's scared. It's why he deletes comments, he strikes opposition, and refuses to speak in the open, as that would require speaking without a script, and live discourse, which I doubt he has the temperament for, especially after seeing that last video. Now, if you're watching this looking for actual answers, I got you. If this is your first time here, we are actually doing something about the current shortcomings of Unreal Engine, currently focused around the Unreal Engine look. Now, we currently have two options on our Patreon for tone mapping, including a recent update adding Chronos to the bundle. Compliments of one of our Discord members, actually, and we have our Shader Shift plugin coming to Fab, which will be complete with not just tone mapping, but different BRDFs, including Burly, dual lobe specularity, and so much more, including some fun additions which might surprise you. Now, the goal of all this is being able to allow you to fully customize the look of your game or project to look precisely as you desire. Not with post-process materials, but to changes to the shader source code itself in an easy-to-use manner straight in the engine. Now, I want to take this moment, in fact, to thank you as well as our Discord community where change is actually happening. Now, don't worry, I won't let TI take credit for this one, as he surely would, when the fact is this was initially developed for our own game, as we were planning on creating unique looks beyond that which is currently available by default, and originally it was just a drag and drop file, and we didn't really think much about it, to be honest, until we got responses, questions, suggestions, all of which fueled deeper discovery and development. Then, driven by our Discord community, refined, ultimately creating our plugin, which is soon to be released. So to all of you, from the ones in our Discord community, link in the description by the way, to the critiques in the comments, I thank you once again. Here, when we see a problem, we don't cry about it, we create solutions. Solutions I'm looking forward to sharing with you. Now, I can harp on TI all day long, but at this point, it's starting to feel like I'm just picking on the awkward kid in class that eats his boogers and smells like sour milk, so I'll leave you all with this. Threat interactive solution of let's just go back in time, it's not going to happen. MSAA is fine, but as stated, there's also CMAA, which you can implement in your own projects today. If Kevin truly had passion, he would put effort behind his words. He would develop a game, share his findings with you, share the tools, project files. He would do, well, what we're doing actually. And to his defenders, I ask you, how long will you support a kid who has never provided you a single kernel of value? He has plenty of ways that you can support him, of course. He has the Patreon, Super Thanks, Bonfire, but what has he ever given you? Not even so much as an update to his game. His Unreal Engine branch? Nothing. Has he maybe bought a copy of your game, played your demo? I doubt it. Kevin and others like him know one thing, and one thing only. Give me it, it's mine! And entitlement doesn't impress me. Now, to close this out, I want to remind everyone we have a live stream coming up upon the release of our plugin to discuss its functions and future, the roadmap, as well as our game, so stay tuned for that. And come with questions. We would love to answer them live. Now, I also want to thank our Patreons. Your support has been amazing, and we are working tirelessly to provide you project files, sneak peeks, and early access to an array of tutorials, tools, projects, courses, and so much more to come. Now, if you'd like to join the Patreon or the Discord community, both are linked in the description down below. Now, to play us out, I'm going to leave you with an oldie but goodie, a power ballad created by one of our long-term Discord members, the Ballad of Kevin the Bold. Take it away.
In a garage with an Intel chip, old Kevin dreamt big, his heart fierce and bold. With nanite he clashed, but the blur was a beast. TAA's fuzzy haze killed his frame rate deceased. Cursed blur he did wail to the stars up above. This engine's a villain, unfit for my love. To YouTube he sped like a rocket on fire, with Anakin thumbnails all edgy, dire. Kevin, you're a thought that no one asked for. You should touch some grass. Your opinions that nobody asked for. You only end up looking like an ass. Fake devs he sneered, though no game had he made. His rants hit the net like a clown on parade. Threat interactive born, our founder he'd crow. A crisp Unreal fork was his dream to bestow. On X he threw shade, called out coders with spite, blocked foes with a strike like a troll in the night. Us versus them, he did chant to his band, while Reddit just laughed, where's your game, my man? His vid struck a chord, 200,000 they drew, but no game emerged, just his wild screamy brew. Oh Kevin, you nut with no title to claim, your blur hating quest is a meme. Worthy game, you're a toy that no one asked for. You should touch some grass. Your opinions that nobody asked for. You only end up looking like an ass. Will you banish the haze or just rant till you're blue? Your Skywalker flares got the net in a stew. So hail Kevin Saga, the goofiest we've known. A pixel mad dreamer in Blur's Battles on.